Welcome back. Princeton University professor Paul Krugman is the winner of the 2008 Nobel Prize for Economics for his work on international trade patterns. He was the sole winner of this year's prize. He is also an op-ed writer for the New York Times, and he joins us live from Princeton this morning. Sir, thank you very much for being with us today.
I'm glad to be on.
Well, we'd like to congratulate you on your prize win for yesterday. We know you're most well known for your political commentary, but this award, this prize, was for the work you've done in your research and your academic research. It has to do with economies of scale and how they affect international trade patterns. But for those who aren't familiar, could you describe a little bit about that work? Sure.
I mean, traditionally, international trade was about how countries are different and they trade because of that. You know, one place is tropical, so it grows coffee. Another place is temperate, so it grows wheat, and they trade the coffee for the wheat. Around 30 years ago, a bunch of us started saying, you know, a lot of international trade doesn't look like that. A lot of international trade is trade between countries that are pretty similar in their resources and their climate, all of that. And the reason for that trade, it seemed clear, was economies of scale, the advantages of producing things on a large scale. So you're not going to have factories producing wide-body jet aircraft in every country in the world. You're going to have it in just a couple of places. So that was a big explanation of trade. But thinking that through, saying, how does it work? Does it produce gains? Are there problems? That was the big area. And you know, a bunch of us did the work. I'm pleased, a little astonished that the Nobel Committee decided that I should get the prize.
Well, Dr. Krugman, we are very lucky to have you here in this timing. We've been watching this bailout plan that's been put together over the last several weeks. We just heard from the President. We're getting ready to hear from the Treasury Secretary. And you've been critical somewhat of the process as it's taken place. You wrote that Mr. Paulson's initial response was, in your words, distorted by ideology. What do you think about the plan as it stands right now?
This looks much better. This is, you know, all of the major economies have now settled on a common framework. This is pretty much similar to what Britain has done. It's similar to what the continental European countries say they're going to do. So really in the last 6 days, this thing has come together with a plan that really does address the critical problem of inadequate capital at the banks, addresses the need for guarantees to calm the markets down. We don't know this is going to work. I wish we were sure, but this is a much better, you know, for the first time I'm starting to feel that policy is really getting some traction on the crisis.
Professor, the ideology, you referred to it as private good, public bad, as what the flawed ideology was. Could we reverse it? And would it be unfair to say that would be your ideology, public good, private bad?
No, it's you know, different horses for different courses is my ideology. You have to look at each situation and decide whether a public intervention is appropriate. Many things we've tried having. You know, no one, well, maybe someone would, but I would not recommend, you know, nationalizing the steel industry. That didn't work. Lots of countries tried that. I wouldn't recommend that that convenience stores be a federal agency, right? We don't want to do that. But it does turn out that a certain amount of public intervention, oversight, and in crisis, partial takeover of the financial system is something you have to do. Leaving the financial system to work things out on its own was disastrous in the 1930s and brought us to the brink of disaster again now.
But would it be overstating your opinion to say that this crisis in some way repudiates free market principles?
It repudiates the hard line, free markets are always right principle. It doesn't say, it's not a case for socialism, but it's a case for regulation, oversight, and for government-led rescues when there's an emergency. So it's a turning. Nobody's going back. You know, we're not going to go back to Karl Marx, but we are going to rediscover some of the things that Franklin Roosevelt learned 75 years ago.
Dr. Krugman, Mohammed Al-Arian is here today as well.
Morning, Paul, and congratulations. Now that we're seeing a response on the global front to the financial crisis, can you speak to what it looks like for the real economy?
Well, you know, we were probably headed, I think we are headed, for a serious recession. You know, even before, the financial markets went crazy about 4 weeks ago, but even before that happened, there was a lot of downward momentum in the economy. And this isn't going to reverse that. This is just preventing it from getting much worse. This is like emergency battlefield medicine to keep the guy from bleeding to death. It doesn't necessarily solve the underlying problem. So, you know, could have been much worse. I'm very glad to see this, but this does not get rid of the need for something to help the real economy. We really need a bigger, better stimulus package.
So are you advocating more policy steps?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think this is the right thing for the immediate financial crisis, but I would say let's have aid to state and local governments. Let's have public spending. Let's have some expanded unemployment benefits, partly because people need it, partly to put cash in the hands of people who are likely to spend it. All of these things that will help to compensate for this decline that we're now seeing in business investment, slowdown in export growth, all of these things pushing the economy down, even if the financial system doesn't blow up.
Professor, all the write-ups today about your award mention your critics and how vocal they are about you, and not just where you are on the spectrum, but the words you use to describe people with whom you disagree. Why do you think you're so reviled?
Well, you know, I was out there. You know, we went through a period when a lot of people were worshiping George Bush, if you can say that. You know, an 80% approval rating. People were saying he's wonderful. Anyone who criticized him is unpatriotic. And I was saying, you know, he's actually a pretty bad guy. He's got bad policies, and he's not being honest with us. And even though at this point, you know, most Americans now agree with me, I will never be forgiven for having been right too soon.
But it's not just it's most Republican administrations. Is that not?
No,
that's not accurate?
That's not accurate. I would have said that the elder Bush I was critical of, but not in this way. Ronald Reagan I was critical of, but not in this way. So this has been unique. This has been a dark chapter in American history.
One of your peers, Professor Klein, actually goes on to say that you would actually omit major issues where the economic conclusion goes against the feel-good Democratic Party ethos.
Well, you know,
that's just the criticism Carl was referring to, I guess. You're going to get that no matter what.
Yeah, I'm going to get that no matter what. Look, we live in highly politicized times. I write a column in the New York Times. I'm not going to write that column the way I'm going to write an academic paper.
Or come on here, you seem much, I don't know, a kinder, gentler Paul Krugman on TV, it seems like. Or could we really get you going if we had more time, I guess?
Yeah, well, I'm a pussycat in real life, but give me 800 words and I start slashing.
All right.
Professor, we want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
We appreciate it, and congratulations again on the award.
Thanks.
All right, coming up, the President's Working Group on Financial Markets getting ready